if you were to create an intention for self-care, you have to start with like, well, what's the purpose of this self-care? Like, what am I trying to get out of creating an intention for self-care? Do I actually need rest? If I'm hiding in the pantry for my kids and I'm just like, self-care, 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 that probably means that I just need dedicated time to myself.
Hey there, this is Unburdened by Hope, the podcast that helps you harness your possibility and fuel your purpose. I'm your host, Erin Cummings. Here, we're breaking free from the chains of hope and unlocking the power of inspiration within. Get ready to ignite your soul because we're diving deep into the art of letting go, embracing the unknown, and creating a life unburdened by the limitations of hope. Together, we'll uncover the secrets to finding purpose, fueling our passions, and crafting a vibrant existence that sets our hearts on fire. So, are you ready to burn it down what's no longer serving you and step into a life driven by possibility? Let's dive in, my friends, and unleash our boundless potential.
Hello, and welcome to podcast 14. This was a requested topic for, not particularly for this week, but just like a requested topic. And the intention for the requested topic was self-care. So I will say, if I'm creating an intention for the week, there are plenty of times where I feel like I'm running out of like, not material, but just like, what's my intention going to be this week? Like sometimes it feels really forced. And so I'll use words like self-care, strength, restoration, ease, like kind of just more or less blanket words that I can kind of look to and think about, but because my brain at the time feels overloaded, I can't just like, sometimes some weeks I can't just like whip out a whole thing. So I had the topic, someone suggested the topic of self-care for a podcast episode. And I'm not gonna lie, usually when I think of someone discussing self-care, it's like an influencer in their luxury vehicle swirling their gold-foiled, freshly squeezed oats into some sort of light brown concoction, and it has that like swirly twirly ice, and they're drinking out of like a straw that was made from a glacier. You know what I mean? Like it just, the word self-care, I feel like for me now, it doesn't mean anything. And it also is like, kind of has this almost arrogant vibe for me, this is my opinion, y'all. It kind of just has like an arrogant vibe now. And so I think if you were to create an intention for self-care, you have to start with like, well, what's the purpose of this self-care? Like, what am I trying to get out of creating an intention for self-care? Do I actually need rest? Do I actually need time to myself? And that's like not hiding, but like designated. If I'm hiding in the pantry for my kids and I'm just like, self-care, 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 that probably means that I just need dedicated time to myself. So then it's like, well, what is the, like, what's behind the, like, door number one is self-care. Cool. Thanks, bro. If you step through that door into that room, like, what's the next door you're going to go to? You know what I mean? Like, is it rest? Is it time to myself? Is it actually, would I like to think self-care is some of the time is actually like creating structure and habits in certain situations. So like, is it actually filing all the paperwork that I need to like, like all of my bills? Do I need to put all my bills? Part of my self-care routine, because of the business side of things, like I have what I like to call finance Fridays. And like my self-care routine is trying not to like have meetings, book certain things on Fridays during a designated time so that I can truly sit down and like work on the financial sides of the business. And that way I'm not behind. I know my numbers, I can stay up to date. And that is so important, because then the flip side of that is if I'm not doing all of that, then I'm like feeling shamey, judged. I'm mad at myself for not having it done. And so I think like self-care is also that, like doing the tasks that like actually need to be done. So that's like self-care. Yeah. Could you sit in a bubble bath with salts from the Dead Sea and a gold 24 karat gold face mask on with your placenta eye cream and, you know, your rosé that a baby goat helped move the grapes for? Yeah, you could totally fucking do that. Yeah. That is, I also self-care. But I think that like at the end of the day, all of that stuff, like my skincare routine I don't consider it self-care, because it's just part of my nighttime routine. It's part of my like daily habitual patterns, which I guess, yeah, like you want self-care to be that. But I don't like do I get joy out of like my skin looking great? Yeah, the fuck I do. But like, it's not it doesn't motivate me to restore, to calm down, to bring peace into my life. Like, it's just skincare. Like, it's just face wash and products. Like, that's how I see it. Self-care to me is like waking up before everyone else in my household and like having some coffee, or sitting in my closet and meditating, or, you know, accidentally forgetting something at home. I do this a lot. I don't think my husband actually listens to this podcast. So I'm going to tell you. So I do this a lot. I will pretend to forget something at home, or just be like, oh yeah, or actually I won't even say anything, to be totally honest with you. I will drop the kids off and like, you know, hey, I'm going to work. Okay, cool, bye. And then I'll like come back home, like I'll stop by my house and either have another cup of coffee or like sit and make myself breakfast, like a real breakfast. And then I go start my day. Like those little moments of just peace are so amazing. Another like self-care moment that I practice is like, if I know I'm going to have a really busy day and I don't do the quick stop at my house, I will get to work very early and I have like a 10-minute window where I like sit and I journal in my journal, like the book that I wrote, The Possibility Project. Like I will fill out my day's stuff in there, and then I will go crank out all of my work stuff. Do I think like getting together with your girlfriends to go drink wine is self-care? Maybe, maybe not. Like depends on who your girlfriends are, right? Like if you're going to meet your girlfriends that like, you don't get a lot of out of a relationship, then you can't really justify it as self-care. If you're going to go meet your girlfriend that's like ride or die, and you have something big going on in your life and she's the one that will actually sit and listen, yeah, that's self-care. But it's not self-care to like, you know, I don't know, go spend $1,000 at the Galleria which is the mall if you're not in Houston. But like if you're like shopping, you know, like that is not self-care, because then you're like spending a bunch of money. So I think when we're defining self-care, the intention is where you have to really look a little deeper and ask yourself, you know, like, what do I actually need? I think that's the big question, is like, if you're going to set an intention for self-care this week, it's like, okay, do I have time to take a bubble bath? Probably. I'm not a bath person. So like, never would I ever consider a bath self-care because I just get so bored. Like I get hot and I get bored. And like, listen, I love the water and I want to swim like a mermaid and I want to do a handstand in the pool. Okay. Like you can't do that in a bathtub. Like there's no room for handstands in the water on the bathtub. I can't walk on my toes. Like there's nothing but just like exposed skin and like, I don't know, bath. It's just weird, but you know what? People love it and more power to you. I'm not a bath person, so I do not consider, never would I ever consider that to be self-care for myself. But like, if I were to want to take time for myself in the equivalent of like, I don't know, I guess a bathtub situation, I would hang out in my room or do whatever, like in my little spot that I like to be in by myself. Hey, you guys, I'm taking 15 minutes of quiet time for myself. Your other parent is here. Please ask them for further questions if you need anything. Okay, thanks. Toodaloo. See you in 20. That to me is more or less like the self-care. The other thing, like, back to Unburdened by Hope, the podcast, like, where can you say fuck hope with self-care is you can't just assume it's also going to fit into your schedule. And you also can't, if you're going to create self-care for the week, you can't also expect to be able to do self-care every day. And so that's where I think where an intention is, in my opinion, really cool. And like, so I don't know, like it's such a powerful tool in my mind of like creating these intentions is like, you might not have the time to do self-care that day. Like you might not have the time to take your 90-minute Stardust bubble bath, but you do have moments throughout the day which you can choose self-care. Like you can choose to, I don't know, not take part in a conversation you don't want to take part of. That's also self-care. I think you can also choose to like answer a hard email if you can the next day or later on, or reply back like, hey, I need extra time with this. Hi, that's self-care, asking for help. Like even with your kids, I think it's totally fine to tell your kids like, hey, mom needs a minute. Boom, that's self-care right there. It's doing things that like set you up. I feel like self-care is doing things that set you up for your next day. And it's not, and that's where it's like, yeah, like my skincare routine is my skincare routine. Is it setting me up for my next day? Yeah, I want glowing skin tomorrow, but like it's not really, in my opinion, how I consider self-care. So I think as you're moving through these intentions for your week and you're wanting, you're creating these more simplified intention words or intention concepts, it's really like asking yourself, like, what's behind the self-care that I'm looking for? Is it quality time? Is it, I don't know. But I think if you break it down further, like I just discussed, which is just like making decisions to set yourself up for your tomorrow, those self-care tactics will start becoming more habitual, and then you will have time for true self-care and you will have time for your 90-minute sparkle fart bubble bath. But when we talk about these short phrases, like even if you were to do the opposite, right? So like say you were to create an intention of strength for your week instead of self-care, it's like, I don't think you're going to go gym bro hard for 4 hours, man. Like I think that there's, you don't want to overdo it, but maybe it's creating strength and like having a conversation you didn't want to have, or once again, strength in self-care, which is like sending the email that's like, hey, I need more time for this. Like, then you get like that double of like, oh, strength and self-care, where that's where like, these more simplified intentions can really make a big impact because they are your compass for the week. And then you can kind of see like, okay, I have this decision that I have to make now. Like, what's my self-care compass say to do? And then you just do that thing. Like you do the thing, you set yourself up for tomorrow. If you want to be this way tomorrow, you have to start making those decisions for today. Otherwise, tomorrow will always be tomorrow. So self-care, I don't know. I have no advice. Like, I guess, I don't know. Like, I personally don't see all of that frou-frou stuff as self-care. However, I think if you enjoy stuff like that, you should keep doing it, because that's the other thing is like, we need to do stuff that's enjoyable, that makes us happy, that keeps us going. Like if you're having a really crap day and like all you want to do is take a bubble bath, then just take the bubble bath, like if all you want to do is like read your book, like go read your book, like stuff like that at the end of the day, yes, is truly self-care. It's not self-care if you're like doing it to like, like I want to have pretty skin. Like as much as that's quote unquote self-care, it's also a lot of ego, and that's not self-care. So I think like making sure you're differentiating between the two also is quite important here. So if you're focused on self-care, or if you've been wanting to focus on self-care and that's your intention for the week, ask yourself, like, what's underneath that? Like, why, what do I need out of self-care? Like, what is it that I really need this week? Is it help from others? Is it time for myself? All of that kind of stuff. And then you can move forward in taking action on like actual self-care tools that you can create that work just for you. So my self-care tools, never will they ever be the same as someone else's self-care tools. So I think that's another important thing to remember in this conversation when it comes to like defining it, is like, well, we can't, because it's like, it's custom to you. So as you're going through this week, as you're focused on self-care, be courageous, capable, and strong with it. And let me know what you ended up doing for self-care, because I would love to know. And if I need to post about some sparkle fart bubble bath for anyone, let me know. And these references today, they were a lot. Yeah, it's very enjoyable to get a little creative with the dialogue here. So, all right, I hope you have an amazing week taking care of yourself. As always, stay courageous, capable, and strong, and I will chat with you next week.
Thanks for listening to Unburdened by Hope. Go to your favorite podcast app, hit that subscribe button, and leave us a review. If you got something out of our show, I'd love to hear from you. Send me your favorite takeaway or any questions you may have to info@erincummings.com. You might even just hear the answer in a future episode. Remember, you are capable, you are courageous, and it's up to you to create what's possible.